Obscure City is a place where you can find many unique dangers. This is where she works, Cassandra Killjoy, paranormal private eye. Now a teenage girl's father has gone missing, and Killjoy believes that the city's enigmatic protector, the Swordsman, is the key to finding him. So Killjoy must face many deadly dangers in her search for the Swordsman. Available on Amazon.com. There's only one proper way to begin this. To me, my X-Men. Greetings, fanboys and fangirls. I'm Erod and I'm the Blockbuster Buster, and there will be spoilers ahead. So if you haven't seen X-Men 97, you might want to stop the video here. You've been warned. And thus we begin in the 90s. Sports were extreme, rap was gangsta, rock was grunge, wrestling had attitude, and cartoons were starting to mature. Fox was one of the few networks that was pushing for more mature and sophisticated animation, and many consider the two shows that broke down the door and blazed the trail for all the others to be Batman the Animated Series and X-Men. Created via a joint venture between Marvel Comics and Toy Biz, X-Men brought the stylized sci-fi action of Marvel Comics to our screens, all the while tackling moral dilemmas, delivering brilliant racial and social commentary, and officially capturing the spirit of Chris Claremont and John Byrne's legendary comic book run. Unfortunately, after 5 seasons, the show that started with a bang ended with a whimper. A change in leadership at the Fox network, combined with Marvel going bankrupt, led to the X-Men production budget to be cut in half, hence the subpar animation during the final season and the show's cancellation. And that was it. X-Men the Animated Series ended, right as we ushered in the era of the live-action movies, most of which are fine, but none captured the spirit of the original comic quite like the cartoon. And then in 2021, on Disney Plus Day, Marvel Studios announced that they were reviving the series. And so the speculation began. Was this new show gonna be in the style of the original show, or were they gonna modernize it? Was the original cast coming back, or were they going to recast it? We had to wait 3 years to find out. And now, I get to say something that I've been waiting to say since I was 9 years old. Previously on X-Men. After an assassination attempt by anti-mutant radical Henry Gyrick, Professor Charles Xavier is left near death, so the X-Men and Magneto gather to say their final farewells to the beloved mutant leader, only for Lilandra and the Shi'ar to show up in the nick of time and pick up Xavier, with the promise that their advanced technology might save his life. And thus, the series ended, with the X-Men left to continue the battle against mutant oppression without their benevolent leader. And now, we finally get to find out what happens next. The plot. The story picks up 1 year later, as Gyrick's attack on Xavier has garnered a great deal of mutant sympathy. So much so, that the mutant nation of Genosha is about to be made part of the United Nations. A plan that is completely derailed by a vicious Sentinel attack on the independent nation. This, of course, creates rifts in society, as well as among the X-Men, who must contend with the true orchestrator of the attack, the human Sentinel hybrid known as Bastion.
You sound like a dinosaur fretting the fate of an asteroid before impact.
Character design and animation. The characters were designed, or should I say redesigned, by Amelia Vidal, who along with the rest of the team was heavily advised by the original series director and writer Larry Houston. By the way, if you love the original X-Men cartoon, Larry Houston should be on your list of favorite people. While Vidal gave the characters more aesthetically pleasing updates, she also aimed to retain the overall flavor of the comics from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And she did an awesome job, as the Children of the Atom have never looked better.
What about Gambit other powers? Oh.
The animation was handled by Studio Mir and Tiger Animation, who brilliantly recreated the animation style of the original cartoon, all the while kicking it up a notch for the action sequences, which, by the way, are freaking mind-blowing.
You smell like burnt hair.
Cast and characters. For those of us hardcore fans, one of the main concerns going into this new series was whether or not they were bringing back the original cast. Unfortunately, the original Charles Xavier, Cedric Smith, is happily retired, so he respectfully bowed out. And of course, Cyclops, Norm Spencer, and Magneto, David Hemlin, sadly passed away. But I am happy to confirm that the rest of the living cast returned. Some were taking on new roles, like Jean Grey, Catherine Disher, is now playing Dr. Val Cooper. Gambit, Chris Potter, is now playing Cable. The original Cable, Lawrence Bain, is now playing the Executioner. Morph, Ron Rubin, is now President Robert Kelly. And Jubilee, Allison Court, is now Abscissa. But the rest are all back as their original characters. Cal Dodd is back as Wolverine. Allison Cieli Smith is Storm. George Busa as Beast. Adrian Hoff as Nightcrawler. Chris Britton as Mr. Sinister. And Lenore Zan as my all-time favorite badass southern bombshell, Rogue. And that is pretty freaking awesome. Alright, we have a lot of characters to cover, so let's jump right in. Nathaniel Essex, codename Mr. Sinister. Power, absolute cellular control. Played by Chris Britton. Sinister is a twisted geneticist obsessed with creating the perfect mutant, and he feels that Jean and Scott are the key to achieving his ultimate goal. Here, we finally get to see him achieve the next stage of his plan, when he kidnaps Jean and Scott's newborn child, Nathan, and infects him with a techno-organic virus that will one day lead to the creation of the ultimate hybrid, Bastion. Now in the comics, it is Apocalypse who infects Nathan with the virus, but honestly, I didn't mind the change, as Sinister is always the villain who's obsessed with the Summers family, so it just felt right. I also loved how he is used in the show as the X-Men's boogeyman, their worst fears brought to life.
No, not you. Not again.
Sebastian Gilberti, codename Bastion. Power, technopathy. Played by Theo James. Bastion is the future, the result of an advanced future sentinel named Nimrod traveling back in time where it was destroyed, and passed a copy of itself to an unsuspecting human janitor, who then sired Bastion, a human sentinel hybrid, born with the ability to communicate and control electronics, and plagued by a very clear vision of the future, one where the only way to achieve peace and prosperity is by weaponizing humans and subjugating mutants. He means well, but his price for a better tomorrow is just too high.
So long as you stay still. So long as you don't resist. Simply listen and obey.
Eric Magnus Lenscher, codename Magneto. Power, magnetism. Played by Matthew Watterson. After the Shi'ar take Xavier, the X-Men maintain the cover story that their beloved professor passed away, which helps garner a great deal of sympathy towards their cause. Sympathy that is jeopardized when they discover that the professor left the X-Men and everything he owns to Magneto. This creates some brilliant misdirection, as a lot of people were counting the minutes for him to betray the X-Men. Hell, there were even some who believed that he was the one behind the attack on Genosha, even though he allegedly dies during that scene. But as a huge Magneto fan, I just knew that that wasn't the case. Yes, Magneto is a radical, but he's not evil. He has a code, and Charles was his best friend. So of course he would honor his dying wish, even if it goes against his strongest beliefs.
Proof of my desire to honor Charles Xavier's dream of mutant-human coexistence.
Also, Matthew Watterson's speech at the end of episode 2 is my all-time favorite dialogue associated with the character.
For an old friend has challenged me to remember this view of Earth. How vast it is versus how small we make it.
Jubilation Lee, codename Jubilee, power, pyrotechnic discharge, played by Holly Chow. As great as the original X-Men cartoon was, it really didn't do Jubilee any favors. Outside of the two-part pilot where she is the audience surrogate, she is pretty pointless for the rest of the show.
What's she gonna do? Hit me with her diaper?
Even episodes where she is the main character are either forgettable or just cringy. Let's face it, that show severely damaged this character's reputation. And the fact that 3 completely different actors played her in the movies and nobody cared is a testament to this. Thankfully, this is one of the things that X-Men 97 fixed. First of all, them recasting the role with an Asian actor to play the Chinese Jubilee was long overdue. It's insane that it took 32 years for them to cast an actor of Asian descent as the voice of Jubilee. Secondly, she finally relinquishes the role of the inexperienced rookie, passing it to Roberto, aka Sunspot, played by Guy Agostini. We finally get to see Jubes grow up, take charge, take responsibility, own her power, and become the essential part of the team that true fans know her to be.
Slay me with the 4th of July.
Haven't heard that one before. Game over, Sleazoid!
Also, it was absolutely surreal to hear Allison Court, the original Jubilee, play opposite to the new Jubilee, Holly Chow.
So, Magneto was right. A bit. But he's totally wrong about one thing. Video games rule.
Lucas Bishop, power, energy absorption, amplification, and redistribution, played by Isaac Robinson Smith. Yeah, we don't know why our favorite time-traveling mutant is there at the beginning of this season. He wasn't there at the end of the original series, and suddenly he's a full-fledged X-Man without explanation. But it's just one of those situations where the character is so great that we don't question it. The popular theory is that after his extended stay in the Axis of Time, Bishop has developed a higher understanding of time and knows exactly where he needs to be in the timeline, where he can be the most useful during key moments. Like taking baby Nathan into the future to be cured of the techno-organic virus, which essentially sets the events of this season in motion. This theory is further supported by his interaction with Forge at the end of the season, where he seems to be more confident about the X-Men's whereabouts.
Luckily, this ain't our first time at the X-Men Are Dead rodeo.
Whatever the case might be, it's just good to have him on the team.
Yo, Cyclops, hit me!
Time for an exorcism, punks!
You're welcome.
Kurt Wagner, codename Nightcrawler, power, teleportation, played by Adrian Hoff. Oh my god, Zilla, they finally added my favorite X-Man to the opening sequence. And yes, I'm fully aware that he's not actually in the episode in which he first appears in the intro. But while we're on the subject, I want to voice my appreciation to the creators for both recreating the greatest intro of all time and for adding different segments in every episode, making it required viewing. As far as why anyone would skip the intro, I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, if you do, you should have your geek card revoked. In fact, Disney should just remove the skip intro button. It sickens me. I am so happy that Kurt is finally portrayed as the playful imp that we love from the comics, and he finally fulfills his function within the group dynamic. After the horrors that transpired in Genosha, Kurt becomes the voice of comfort and reason for the team, their unofficial conscience in these times of turmoil. Not to say that he can't throw down if the situation calls for it. This show has some of the absolute best fight sequences involving the character outside of the comics.
No, mein Freund. Nein.
Morph, power, shapeshifting, played by J.P. Karliak. I just love how the character that was only added to the franchise to die refuses to. After being on and off the team throughout the original run, due to there not being a plan in place for the character, we finally get to see what it would be like to have Morph as a full-time member of the team. And it is hilarious.
Oh, hello you on the sidelines, watching our exhausting perfection every day.
Morph brings so much needed levity to a very dark and tragic season. For once, the shameless buffoonery is much welcome.
Maybe we ask poor man's Oppenheimer before he...
In the revival, Morph now identifies as non-binary, which for a shapeshifter makes all the sense in the world. However, that still managed to ruffle the feathers of a bunch of guys who didn't give a crap about the character for 32 years. And I just have to say, if you feel prejudice towards inclusion and diversity in X-Men, then boy, did you miss the point. The season subtly establishes that Morph has romantic feelings for Wolverine. Whether or not the cranky Canadian reciprocates the sentiment is left ambiguous, as he is still hopelessly obsessed with Jean. What we do know is that no matter how bad things get, the two can always count on each other. And I 100% agree with voice actor J.P. Carliak. It is important for people to see a healthy relationship between a queer man and a straight man.
Go easy on him, pal. Think you just sent his hush puppies up into his stomach.
Dr. Hank McCoy, codename Beast, power, superhuman agility and strength, played by George Buza. In this tumultuous season, Beast becomes our comfort character, the voice of reason in a maelstrom of prejudice. However, the gentle giant exhibits one of the most unique role changes in the season, as the attack on Genosha causes Beast to have an existential crisis, questioning the beliefs of Charles Xavier, and start to consider that maybe, just maybe, Magneto was right.
Perhaps the professor's vision for the future was too nearsighted, and begging for your tolerance was our first mistake.
Charles Xavier, codename Professor X, power, telepathy, and mind control, played by Ross Marquardt. One of the boldest moves this season was showing that the benevolent leader of the mutant movement is not perfect.
Even Charles Xavier can make a mistake.
After being faced with his own mortality and saved by the Shi'ar, Xavier decides to stay and enjoy a life of comfort next to the woman that he loves, fooling himself into believing that giving his life in the mutant conflict absolved him and freed him from his responsibilities, in spite of the fact that mutant discrimination still persists within the Shi'ar Empire.
Indeed, this Xavier is not even a pure Terran, a lower caste, a mutant.
But as Superman always says, the fight for truth and justice is a never-ending battle. So he is given a choice: purge his mind of his memories of the X-Men and his time on Earth and stay with his beloved Lilandra, or go back to his, and I quote, Milky Way ghetto.
Xavier would see his Milky Way ghetto.
Lady, you evolved from birds. Your bones are hollow. Somebody could break your arm with a wiffle ball bat. You are not better than us. But after experiencing the psychic resonance of the Genosha tragedy, our esteemed professor bites the bullet and goes back to Earth, where he finds that the X-Men have moved on without him. But that is the best thing about Xavier. He doesn't fight for glory or reward. He fights because it's the right thing to do.
To me, my X-Men.
Logan, codename Wolverine, power, healing factor, played by Cal Dodd. You know what's my favorite aspect of the show, even above the excellent writing and the amazing animation? That Wolverine is not the main character. I like most of the X-Men movies, but the reason why they generally fall flat is that they put too much focus on Wolverine, and he is not a lead. He's a supporting character. Even Wolverine and the X-Men had to introduce extenuating circumstances to justify him being the lead. And even that was still an ensemble show. Hell, there are even some episodes that he's barely in. So after a decade of over-glorifying this character to the point where he literally got younger and taller, Wolverine is finally back to being the character that he's supposed to be. A short, grumpy old man who loves to fight and complain about things.
Cooper's listing every nasty step Magneto's taken from here to Asteroid M. Folks outside are pissed he's even getting a trial. Can't say I blame him.
Which makes it all the more absurd that there were people complaining that in this show, they made Wolverine boring. I'm sorry, what?
Jeez, Dad. keep buzzing in my ear.
He's not boring, he's just not the focus. He is still a militant, angry mutant who chooses to work with pacifistic mutants to fight for equality. And he is still a hopeless romantic who chooses not to pursue the girl of his dreams because he knows he's not good enough for her. If that doesn't make him the most interesting character in the show, I don't know what does. Also, Clawnado. Aurora Monroe, codename Storm, power, weather control. Played by Allison Ciali Smith. The Queen is back! After the boring, lame, impotent Storm that we got for 16 years, the goddess has been restored to her full glory.
Ancient sands, heed my command and reclaim these relics of hatred!
And they didn't just give the Queen her Omega levels back, they also gave her her own subplot. As during an attack by the Friends of Humanity hate group, Storm is tragically depowered. Which might sound contradictory to all the praise that I just gave the show, but it's not. To the contrary, as losing her mutant powers demonstrates just how strong Aurora is. As she doesn't allow her condition to defeat her, she heads out on a journey of self-discovery as well as a search for a cure, which she finds through Forge, the very man who invented the technology that took her power. But she soldiers on, faces off against demons both literal and figurative, and eventually gets her groove back.
Let them thunder, for I am lightning!
Welcome back, Your Majesty. Remy LeBeau, codename Gambit, power, kinetic energy distribution. Played by AJ Locascio. Remy starts the season as the same carefree scoundrel that we know and love. And then suddenly a chink in his armor is exposed when he discovers Rogue and Magneto's romantic past, which ended up being one of the most shocking revelations this season, as apparently there's a lot of people that didn't know that this was a thing. Yes, Rogue and Magneto have been on and off for years, hell, even before her romance with Gambit started. However, her entanglement with Eric has less to do with actual love and more to do with him being one of the few mutants that she can touch. So the number one question that I've gotten over and over again about this show for the past few weeks is how the hell can Magneto touch Rogue without getting hurt? Well, he can create a thin electromagnetic force field close to his skin that allows him to feel basic sensation but not be harmed. It's basically like a full-body electromagnetic condom. Yeah. This starts to make the cool Cajun question his place with the X-Men and starts to consider moving on. And then we get to episode 5. Now, most original Disney Plus shows follow the same pattern. They start big and then they build up and build up and build up until the 4th or 5th episode, when they hit us right in the face with a big shocking moment, like Wanda being the one who created the Hex, or John Walker turning out to be a psychopath. So most of us were braced for episode 5 of X-Men 97 to be shocking. As it turns out, none of us were ready. The episode sees this season's romantic triangle visit Genosha, only to find that it is now a paradise for mutants, which quickly turns into hell when a wild sentinel attacks, and it is horrific. Approximately 1 million mutants die in spite of our hero's best efforts. And then it is Gambit who makes the sacrifice play to save everyone, making his most memorable line,
"The name is Gambit. Remember it."
His most meaningful.
Remember it.
We will, mon ami. We will. Anna Marie, codename Rogue. Power, bioenergy absorption and replication. Played by Lenore Zan. As I've said before, Rogue has always been awesome in the cartoons. But as much as I loved Goth Rogue and Punk Rock Rogue, I am so happy to have the badass Southern Belle Rogue back. With Magneto back in her life and the prospect of a safe place to settle down, Rogue seriously starts contemplating leaving the team. This, of course, is completely turned on its head after the Genosha attack, where she seemingly loses Magneto and definitely loses Remy, with the saddest revelation of all being that in the end she chose him and not Magneto.
Thanks for the dance, sugar. But Remy was right. Some things are deeper than skin.
And in my humble opinion, Lenore Zan's performance in the aftermath of Remy's death is the best in her career.
I can't feel you.
In doing research in preparation for this video, I discovered that that was not actually a performance and was 100% genuine, as Lenore had just lost her 17-year-old niece to cancer and was still grieving. So on behalf of the fandom, I just want to extend my gratitude to Lenore and thank her for sharing something so private in service of the characters that we love. The Genosha attack, however, causes the most visceral change in Rogue, as she leaves the obedient team player behind and lives up to her name, defying any and all authority, which is best symbolized when she chucks Captain America's shield all the way back to Wakanda, as she becomes a one-woman revenge squad, gunning for the one responsible for the death of her man.
His name was Gambit. Remember it!
Madeline Pryor and Jean Grey. Power, telepathy, and telekinesis. Played by Jennifer Hale. I think it's fair to say that with her being casted in this show, Jennifer Hale has become the definitive voice of Jean Grey, voicing the character in Wolverine and the X-Men, 2 Marvel anime, and 2 of the Marvel vs. Capcom games. She's definitely the definitive sound of the Phoenix Force. Here, Jennifer's talent is put to its full use, as Jean goes through a complete gamut of emotion. She starts the season happily married to Scott and giving birth to their son, Nathan, who would one day grow up to be Cable. Everything is honky-dory, until we are hit with the biggest plot twist of the season. That was not Jean Grey. That was her clone, Madeline Pryor, created by Mr. Sinister to sire the perfect mutant baby that he needs for his experiments. Hell, that wasn't even Jean in the intro of the first 3 episodes. Now that was a great detail. So essentially, Jennifer Hale ends up pulling double duty for the season, playing the bitter Madeline Pryor who becomes the Goblin Queen under Sinister's control, and the dazed and confused Jean Grey, trying to reinsert herself back into the life she once had. It's the best the character has been written since X-Men Evolution. And on top of all that, unlike her original show counterpart, who would faint almost every time she used her powers, they restored Jean to the Omega level power that she's supposed to have. Scott Summers, codename Cyclops, power, Optic Blast, played by Ray Chase. For 16 years, the X-Men movies brainwashed an entire generation into believing that Cyclops is a lame, wimpy, superfluous character. And in one single episode, this show confirmed what I've been saying for 2 decades. Cyclops is cool, he is complex, and most importantly, he's one bad motherfucker. In the original show, he took out a Sentinel single-handed.
Surrender, mutant. Of course. Not.
Do you really think that a bunch of regular humans with Mega Man cannons are gonna be a challenge?
Take his visor before he starts up again.
No, don't! I surrender! Not.
In Xavier's absence, Cyclops assumes full command of the X-Men, which is immediately challenged when Xavier leaves the team to Magneto. And then he and Madeline have Nathan, and the two consider moving on. But what makes Cyclops great is that he always makes the difficult choices, even when he has an easy out. As he gives up his own son so he can be cured of the techno-organic virus in the future. He relinquishes leadership to Magneto, and he gives up Madeline when he finds out that their marriage was a lie, even though he loved her. And that to me makes him the most heroic character of all, constantly giving up what he wants to do what's right. Here we also get to see the moment that we've been waiting for since the original series, when he finally finds out that Cable is his long-lost son from the future.
Oh my god. Nathan.
We finally get to see the Summers kicking ass together, and it is glorious. Eat your heart out, Incredibles! And I can't compliment Ray Chase enough, not just for playing the badass hero,
To me, my X-Men.
but the loving, regretful father as well.
I love you, son.
Season 1, technically 6. First things first, I want to give props to Julia and Eric Lewald, the showrunners of the original X-Men show, who along with Larry Houston, worked as consultants on X-Men 97, ensuring that this series would have the same spirit and tone as the original. And now that the pleasantries are out of the way, holy so much happens in just this one season. Getting through these 10 episodes is like watching the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy in one sitting. So much action, character progression, and story transpire in this season, it's insane. As the creators seamlessly weave multiple comic book storylines into the narrative, like Inferno, Life Death, E is for Extinction, and Operation Zero Tolerance. And that is just the tip of the iceberg. I counted 14 comic book storylines that were either adapted or referenced throughout this season, and I have a friend that claims that there are more. Not to mention that the crux of the entire season is a time loop that links it to the original series. You see, when Scott and Madeline sent baby Nathan to the future to be cured, in the future the virus evolves into prime Sentinel human hybrids, and eventually the advanced Sentinel, Nimrod, who then travels back in time to 1959 in the original series episode One Man's Worth to kill a young Charles Xavier before he creates the X-Men. Nimrod, of course, fails and is destroyed, but in X-Men 97 we discover that that was not the end of him. Nimrod's remains deploy an advanced version of the techno-organic virus that infects one of the janitors at the university, who then passes the virus to his newborn son, Bastion, who is born part human and part Sentinel, and plagued with visions of the future. It is this advanced information that informs his plan. He knows that the only way to achieve a utopia is by subjugating mutant kind, so he curtails mutant progress by destroying Genosha, which both decreases the mutant population and radicalizes the remaining mutants, which of course scares humans and helps him get approval for his Prime Sentinel program, weaponizing 25% of the human population of the planet, turning them to sleeper hybrid sentinels programmed to activate when you least expect them and either capture or kill all mutants, as it is difficult to hide or know who to trust when anyone can be a sentinel. While in the comics it is Cassandra Nova who sets the wild sentinel loose on Genosha, the change didn't bother me, as using sentinel technology has always been Bastion's modus operandi, so it fit. After the X-Men suffer hit after hit after hit, they finally catch a break from the most unlikely of sources, as Bastion opted not to kill Magneto during the Genosha attack, and he keeps the mutant radical alive as both a trophy and a potential scapegoat. All of that goes sideways when a regretful Dr. Val Cooper sets Magneto free, and Eric gets his revenge by creating a planet-sized electromagnetic pulse that shuts down all the electricity on the planet, effectively stopping all the Prime Sentinels but leaving the planet to die with everyone on it, with the intention of saving all the mutants by giving them refuge on Asteroid M. Sadly, Rogue and Roberto, aka Sunspot, are the first to join him. So this is it. The final battle to save the planet and stop Bastion. The X-Men don their classic uniforms from the 70s and 80s, which some of you might recognize from Pride of the X-Men and the X-Men arcade game, which leads to my favorite line in the entire season.
Am I going to war or a circus?
What'd you expect? Black leather?
That's right, suck it, X-Men 2000!
What would you prefer? Yellow spandex?
How dare you make fun of some of the greatest costume designs in all of fiction, you pretentious f***s. So our heroes split into two teams. Team Blue, led by Cyclops, will head to Asteroid M to force Magneto to restore the planet. Team Gold, led by Jean, will go to the Galapagos Islands to neutralize Bastion with a modified version of the mnemonic scrambler, the same doohickey that they used to stop the Dark Phoenix all those years ago. What ensues is beyond epic. This is one of the most badass, awesome climaxes in the history of the franchise. It's impactful, uncompromising, bombastic, and just legendary. They even recreated one of the most iconic moments from the comics, when Magneto rips the adamantium from Wolverine's bones. Ouch. After many awesome cameos that clearly establish that this show takes place in the Marvel animated universe, the government cowardly fires missiles at Asteroid M, accidentally knocking it out of orbit and basically dooming the planet to be destroyed by its impact. Yeah, that was dumb. Luckily, the X-Men initiate a plan to stop the asteroid and nearly succeed, when suddenly they vanish. So it looks like it's about time for an epilogue. Rogue, Nightcrawler, Beast, Xavier, and Magneto end up in ancient Egypt in 3000 BC, where they encounter a young Ensabanur, the mutant who will one day be called Apocalypse. Gina and Scott end up in a post-apocalyptic future, circa 3960 AD, ruled by Apocalypse, where they encounter the Ascani tribe, of which Nathan, aka Cable, is a member of. But here's the million-dollar question. Where the heck are Storm, Wolverine, and Morph? I have a theory about that. At this point, the world thinks that the X-Men are dead, which happened in the comics several times. But on one of these occasions, Wolverine, Storm, and Morph, known in the comics as Changeling, ran their own covert secret team of X-Men from Australia. So that is where I think we're gonna find them in the next season. And last but not least, during the mid-credit scene, present-day Apocalypse is seen unearthing Gambit's Queen of Hearts card from the rubble in Genosha. So what the heck does all of this mean for the next season? Basically, that Wolverine was right.
He's here!
Apocalypse?
Yeah, we're gonna get a lot of Ensabanur in the next season, as I believe that Apocalypse has sent most of the X-Men to key moments in his personal history to ensure that events transpire in his favor, and also to recruit some of them to be his new Four Horsemen. And one of these recruits will be a resurrected Gambit, who he will bring back to life as the Horseman of Death. So there you go. That's my theory for the next season. Remember it. Final verdict. While, thankfully, throughout the years and through all the X-Men adaptations, the message of racial equality and tolerance was preserved, somewhere along the way the franchise lost its soul. While X-Men delivers brilliant social-political commentary, it is also a colorful, weird, high-concept franchise that is not afraid to take its characters into the most fantastic of settings. X-Men 97 brought that back. Yes, sometimes the show gets silly and corny, but that doesn't mean that it's bad. Other adaptations would shy away from this, therefore depriving the stories of the levity that they need to achieve balance. This show is everything X-Men is supposed to be, unfiltered, uncut, and uninhibited. A true celebration of everything this extraordinary comic is, blowing all the past adaptations out of the water. So, for those of you who are wondering, yes, X-Men 97 has replaced Wolverine and the X-Men as my all-time favorite X-Men cartoon. But you know what? I'll take it a step further. X-Men 97 is now my all-time favorite Marvel Studios Disney Plus show. But you know what? I'll take it even further than that. X-Men 97 is my all-time favorite X-Men thing ever created. Above the comics, above the other cartoons, and above the movies. Oh yeah. 10 points on that bad attitude meter. Put on your half shirt, fry up some beignets, and give it a watch. Until next time, I'm Erod, and I'm the Blockbuster Buster.